Hi everybody, welcome back to Caravan of Consciousness. This is episode 10 and today is March the 22nd, 23rd, something like that. 23rd, I think. I lose track of time. 2024. And today my guest is Nachiketa. And I'll just give you a little brief bio on Nach that he sent me. He was born in South Korea and adopted to the US when he was 10. He had a normal upbringing, and after university, he decided to reconnect with his roots and move back to South Korea from 2004 to 2014. After traveling around East Asia, he landed in Nepal, where he lived for 3.5 years and went on a motorcycle trek in 2018 for about 10 months around India, and then decided to settle in a village in the Himalayas until now. Nachiketa spends his time researching various subjects and working on himself, and he's still trying to figure out what in the world is going on, as a lot of people are, probably most of us. So welcome, Nach.
Well, thanks for having me, Amanda. I appreciate you asking me to come on your show and to have this conversation with you.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you. I first saw you, I think it was a few months ago, you were on a round table with Brian Staveley. I've been following Brian for a few years now, probably since about 2015, 2016. And so I saw
Hmm.
you on a round table, and then I subbed to your channel, and then you started to share some videos. And so I've been sort of watching your stuff since. And yeah, but we can share your channel later with people so they can find you. But just getting back to your bio and your story, your life story. So, do you want to just give us a little bit of a thumbnail sketch on your childhood and yeah, how things went for you going from being born in Korea and then the culture shock going to America at such a young age?
Yeah. So like I talk about my life on my channel, but like basically, I come from a bit of a aristocratic family, my father's side. I don't know a lot about my mother. But long story short, my father, somehow, ruined our family by, spending money and just going wild. I don't know exactly all the details, but at least he's somehow responsible for the downfall of our house. And I was like a result of a kind of an affair with my biological mother. He was married already at the time. So it's a little bit of a messy situation already. Of course, I didn't know any of this until I came back to Korea. But basically, I was in different types of foster care because by the time I was already born, my father didn't have a lot of money. My family didn't have a lot of money. So I ended up going into foster care between like my uncles and aunts, grandparents. I remember at least 15 different places, but I was told that I probably lived over 100 different places.
Wow.
Uh, uh, yeah, from birth until like my orphanage. And my father passed away when I was about eight and a half-ish. And I was living with my uncle in a small, like, one room, apartment in Seoul, I guess. And then after he passed away, I decided to run away. I didn't really feel like there wasn't anything for me really, and they were only taking care of me because my father was the oldest son, and they felt responsible for me. But I didn't really feel that I was wanted there, frankly speaking. And so it wasn't like a conscious decision that I'm going to run away. It was more like I didn't want to come home from school, and then it became nighttime, and like if I go home late, they would get angry. So I just, delayed
Yeah.
and it just, found a place to stay. And then it just extended to like, several weeks to months like this. And then, during that time, being like 8 years old, you do what you can to survive. It was tough times, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm glad I got that all out of the way,
Yeah.
early on,
Yeah.
when I could actually handle it. But yeah, that's part of the early childhood experience, I would say. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. And so how did you get from South Korea to the US? What happened there with, so you're obviously adopted into a US family?
Yes. So basically, what happened was that I was in the streets and I was begging for food from a guy who, shines shoes, they fix shoes, they're like out in the streets. He went into a shop and then he bought like a little bit, like, a box of milk and bread. They come in little packages. He was handing it to me, and then before he gave it to me, he grabbed me and then he like took me to the police station. And like initially, of course, I was like a little bit afraid, and I didn't want to go. I was like, used to being out in the streets at this point. But in retrospect, I know this guy was kind of looking out for me in a way, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So he was concerned about my future, and he probably didn't know, where else to take me. And this was like, 1988, 87 South Korea at the time, so they're not really, you know, modernized yet, quite, there's still things, happening over there. And I went to the police station, and then they transferred me to like a juvenile jail where I stayed for a couple of weeks. And I guess my family was notified or something. And then from there, I was transferred to an orphanage where I stayed for about a year, year and a half. And there's a thing called like a statute of limitation about the age difference between the parents and the child. So for for my mother and my father, they were 55 at the time. I was the youngest child they could possibly adopt, because the limitation was 45 years apart. So I was chosen out of three boys for them, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how I got adopted to my family in America.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. What a massive experience at such a young age to go through all that. I can only imagine. Wow. Yeah. And so how did you find America? I bet it would have been a little bit of a culture shock initially and not knowing the language or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was already a little bit illiterate when I was in Korea just because I didn't really go to school. And when I actually was at the orphanage, that was the first time for me to sit down and go to school. And I realized that I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I didn't know how to do basic math. Like, I didn't know how to add or divide or minus, or I'd never even seen those like symbols before. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So actually, I thought I was stupid, like because I just didn't know what was going on, and
Yeah.
I just accepted the fact that I wasn't going to understand, and I'm just going to sit in the back and look out the window. So that was my orphanage experience during school. And then when I came to the States, yes, I grew up in a small rural town of Ripon, Wisconsin, which is like 8,000, less than 8,000. My father worked at a small private college there as a professor, very liberal, you can imagine, and 99.99% of the population was white, you know,
Yeah.
except for my family. My parents are white, and they have three children, a brother and two sisters who are of my biological parents' children, and they decided to adopt three children. Like I have two sisters from Korea, and I'm the youngest, but we're not blood related.
Yeah.
So as you can imagine, it was I was like, kind of a little bit out of place in a place
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Were you more of a novelty or did you get bullied or teased because of your different culture and your different ethnicity?
Ye- Yeah, I would say, I was a bit of a target
Yeah.
for other kids for sure. And then I would say like, like I just stood out, like if I go to other towns where there was some kind of fair or something going on, everybody would be staring at me.
Yeah.
I just did not belong there
Yeah.
at all, but you get used to it. You get used to it and you just handle it the best you can. And it actually strengthened me to, be able to travel without like really caring about being different from anybody else, still too. later on, you know.
Yeah.
But it was difficult for sure when you
Yes.
were like, younger. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most children, it's human nature, I guess, to want to fit in and to be accepted by your peers. So, to already have the disadvantage to be the only Asian person in that town at that time, or with your other brother and sister as well. Yeah, I mean, even for me, I emigrated from England when I was 7 and came to Australia, and like Australians are basically an English country anyway, because Australia was colonized by the English, well, mostly English. But even that was a culture shock for me, coming to a completely different culture, and just being called a pommy or a limey or things like that as I was growing up in school, and having a different accent because I was born in the north of Yorkshire. So I had a really, really strong North Yorkshire accent at the time. Yeah, so I can understand, but I probably only had a small fraction of that. Part of this, people around me were, I was a bit of a novelty and they wanted to get to know me, but then I got the other side of it, the bullying. Yeah, and it is difficult as a child, but it does make you stronger, and it makes you, as you say, you develop the skill of not really caring what other people think. Like you just, yeah, you definitely grow a thick skin, that's for sure. So, and how
I
with your,
I did go through a period where, I wanted to be blonde and blue-eyed, white child, that would make my life a lot easier and more simpler, and that would allow me to fit in. But it was a
yeah,
phase, you can say.
yes, yeah, yeah. And I guess now we know, with our spiritual practices, that we chose to come in, how and when we did, and all that sort of stuff, for soul lessons and soul development and things. So yeah. So with your family
Mhm.
life, like your parents, your adoptive parents, um, were you did you have a loving environment, and did they sort of nurture you in certain regards to your talents or where you wanted to go in life, your direction in life?
Yeah, I'm very grateful for my family, 100%. They themselves are from New York, Rochester. And they come from, pretty well-to-do families. My father's father was a businessman, and his grandfather was like a doctor. And my mother's side, they're like, chemists and stuff like this. So they, very like middle class, upper middle class, and education has always been very important. Obviously, they were raised Christian themselves, when they were younger, but um, my grandfather from my father's side, he attended like Unitarian Church. So that gave them a very different, perspective compared to other Christians you can imagine. And my father himself and my mother, um, they were agnostic, like they were very liberal and very, kind of open-minded, you can imagine. And my father was an economic professor and all this kind of stuff. So we never went to church. We didn't talk about God. We didn't talk about the Bible or anything like this. So I was kind of free to explore and inquire and go into areas that I wanted to go into. But uh, we really cared about accuracy, I think, about like, if you are going to bring up a subject, know what you're talking about, bring evidence. So it's very scientific in
Yeah,
a way in which that we were, and like it was, my grandfather from my father's side, he comes from Wales. Okay.
yeah,
So we like my father, we have like a Welsh background. So like, if you look at my family, they're like Welsh German mix predominantly. And I would say they still carry that culture with them,
yeah,
and they instilled that kind of mentality with me. I would say, yeah.
yeah. And so you got through university, and then you ended up deciding to go back to South Korea. So
hmm
do you want to talk us a little bit through what happened there, and like what were you doing in university? What were you wanting to achieve as far as a career or vocation?
like I never really cared for school that much, because I've already had like, 10 years of like in Korea not really going to school. And then when I came to America, my parents really had to, motivate me. And my dad did everything he could to motivate me to do. I mean, they knew I could do well if I really wanted to, It's just that the problem is I have to care, And so him being like an economic professor, he created like an algorithm that if I got like an A, I would get so much, money in my allowance per week, and it was like exponential.
Yep.
If I got A's, I would get like really ridiculous amount of money per week.
Yep.
And I was okay with getting like B's and B minus. It was enough money for what I wanted to do, which is like rent video games on the weekends and play video games and stuff like this. So when I went to college, that was like first time being away from home. I went to Stevens Point in Wisconsin, and I kind of went nuts. Like I drank like almost every day. I had a drinking problem.
Yep.
And it initially I wanted to major in psychology because I was really interested in like human psychology, and I wanted to know more about myself and other people. So I took a lot of psychology credits my freshman year, but they booted me out because I was kind of drunk a lot,
Yep.
frankly. So I spent a year off doing AmeriCorps, doing volunteer work in New York. And that was a great experience. And I came back to university, and I was doing a lot of sketching and drawing when I was in the Adirondacks, and thought, I enjoyed doing this. So I thought I would go into the art department. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I thought maybe I would teach art, and then all my professors were telling me that, oh, you should, get PhD in art. You know how to draw, you know how to paint, you know how to sculpt. I did sculpture as my BFA, and I enjoyed doing that, but I wanted to like take some time off to go back to Korea just to, learn more about my past, learn more about where I come from and why I got adopted. But that just ended up becoming like not 1 year process. It was like a 10 years of trying to search out what was going
Yep.
on. So that's kind of what happened. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yeah, but going back to South Korea, just like a thumbnail sketch there, and then jump forward to was it in South Korea that you started up your businesses and you had
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so initially, I went back and, I just started teaching English because they have a demand for, and, it doesn't matter if you're an English major or not. It doesn't even matter at the time if you were an ex-convict in Korea, as long as you spoke English, back
yeah,
in 2004, like they didn't care, they
yeah,
were just hiring anybody. And so I worked at a like they call it Hagwon in Korea, which is like a private institute, and I taught there for about a year. And then, I got involved with the sport called Ultimate Frisbee. So a lot of my friends were into this sport called Ultimate Frisbee. And then, we were hanging out at, a couple, places in Seoul that we really enjoyed. And, again, drinking became a bit of a part of my life. And I met somebody who used to be a manager at a bar, and, she had a rough history herself. It's a little bit harrowing, but like, basically she, went through abuse with her ex-boyfriend and almost died. And, we fell in love, and we decided to start up our own business of doing Mike's Cabin in Korea. Um, and I got a little bit of a windfall from my grandparents when I was at that age. And so I decided to use that money to make this business. The business went well, actually,
it's still
surprisingly,
going
after
now,
being
isn't
empty
it?
for it is
Yeah,
actually there's a couple of them going on, but I have nothing to do with it.
yeah,
Only issue is that my relationship didn't go so well, and uh like long story short, like I was not really very responsible with the way I handled that business with this lady. And I don't like to complain or blame because like it's like I take all responsibility on myself for everything that has happened. But really to talk about like what happened. That I was basically scammed
Yeah.
completely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if for my listening audience, if you want the full details, Natch will at the end of the show will give you his YouTube channel where you can find all. He did a, I don't know how many part series, about a 8 or 10 part series, I think.
Yeah.
It goes quite in depth into your story and yeah, of what happened at different stages in your life. So from there, from South Korea, then you started traveling in, was it Nepal or India?
Yeah, so like I spent 10 years there, like teaching in English, and then, I had this bar business for I would say about a year and a half before things really went sideways for me. She took over. I got scooted out of there. And then I went back and started teaching English again. I found another girlfriend who was very supportive of me, and then I did like traditional Korean housing, carpentry work for about a year. So that was like, like hard work, getting like up 6 in the morning, working 12 hours, and just like going to sleep. And then it was like military style,
Yeah.
So I worked at the place that I was sleeping at the place I was working, and we would work like 21 days in a row, you know,
Wow.
uh,
Yeah.
and then you get like 4 days off, and then you do like another, round of
Mm.
21 days in a row,
Wow.
you know.
That's insane.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm glad I remember like every morning I woke up, the first thing I felt were my hands, like they were throbbing,
Yeah.
and after like you get up and then you start, doing stuff and then everything, but like it toughens you up,
Yeah. Yeah.
doing that kind of work, so
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm happy that I had that experience. I wanted to know what like, quote unquote, like, regular down to earth Koreans and how they were living. And that was the kind of work that I got, I gave like it was like a lesson on like, what a Korean style of working man's like life was about, really, so I got
Yeah.
that and they were asking me like, hey, like you can speak English, you can teach, and you can earn like double the money doing like half the work, like what are you doing here? And I'm like, I just want to see what this is about. I have to see it for myself,
Yeah.
so I got to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
so I did that, and then I ended up working. After that, I was like, okay, I really had enough. Like after about a year, then I got hired at a publishing company in like, suit and tie and, like cubicle doing translation work and editing at a publishing company for like 3 years. They really loved me. I got along with everybody, and they wanted me to sign like a contract for like rest of my life. And I said to myself, okay, like I'm doing okay, and I got a little bit of money saved up, and then I don't really have a serious girlfriend, no marriage, no kids. Is this really something that I want to do for the rest of my life? Really, I mean, like it was the easiest it can be, I
Yeah.
mean, like it was such and it was very smooth. But I really didn't feel that that's something that I wanted to commit to, frankly speaking. So I just decided to liquidate everything, turn everything into a backpack, and I started traveling. And then first place I went was Japan because it's just right there next to
Yeah.
Korea. And I figured, okay, I got a little bit of money, and Japan's probably going to be one of the more expensive places to go, so I might as well go there first, see how it goes, And when I went to Japan, I was in Kyoto, and like I randomly met a Dutch girl who invited me to go to China. She spent a year in China learning Chinese, and she like initially she was supposed to go to China to travel with her Dutch girl friend, another friend, but she like backed out, and she was kind of looking for somebody else, and we met. We got along, and she invited me to go to travel to China with her, and I said, sure, why not? Beautiful Dutch lady who was
Yeah.
younger than me wanted inviting me to go, and I was like, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. Wow. So you've certainly seen some places. Yeah. Wow. So
Only compared to some.
yeah, yeah. So how did you find Japanese culture? And I've heard Japan is absolutely beautiful. Is it a very different culture to Korea? Um,
It's similar. I would say Japan and Korea are closer to each other than Korea to China,
Yeah.
as an example, or Japan to China. I mean, there's a little bit of a like prejudice, from all these countries towards each other in various ways, but more or less, like Japan and Korea do not like China. Like
Yeah.
that's like like that's something that we have in common, and then of course we have our checkered past as well between Korea and Japan. I always kind of imagine like Japan to be like the older, stern brother of Korea,
Yeah.
and Korea is always like kind of following on the footsteps of Japan, but they're very similar in many ways. I would say Japan is super clean,
Yeah.
and like really the people are like, very very honorable. You can leave at that time when I was traveling. I could like leave my wallet in the bathroom, come back like an hour later, it will be sitting there.
Still
Nobody
there.
would
Yeah.
touch it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
the kind of culture. And you wouldn't do that. You couldn't do that in Korea. So it will be gone within like 5 minutes in Korea. So like I
Yeah.
would say that that's part of the difference between Japan and Korea. And
Yeah.
Japan's much cleaner. Like even in Tokyo, like I never seen like 30 million people packed in, small area where it was like immaculate. Really, everywhere you went, even though like I like to go to places where nobody likes to go just to see
Yeah.
for myself, and everywhere it's just equally clean,
Yeah.
and you can do that in Korea. There are places where it's like absolutely, a dump
Yeah.
in places, but
Yeah.
not in Tokyo, not in other Osaka or other places. I would just get a bicycle and I just like ride around just to see what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I know someone that's living in Japan that has been for quite a few years, and yeah, and they love it over there. Yeah. He's actually a photographer, and yeah, he's got some absolutely great photos. Yeah. So you go to China. So do you want to talk us through a little bit about that next part of your journey?
Yeah, so like this lady, she had to go to Indonesia. I went to Mongolia. I was traveling in Mongolia a little bit, and then we met up in near Shanghai, China. She flew up, I flew down, and then we began our journey. We took a train from this like Shanghai area to I think it was like Xining, but there's a Guming. It's like really like a southern part of China. It was like almost like a day, like maybe it was like 24-hour train ride. I don't remember. We slept in the train, and then we began our journey. And she was interested in going to, excuse me, like Tibetan parts of China. So, when China took over Tibet, Tibet used to be much larger, and like half of it got broken up, and it got added to like Sichuan and Yunnan. And so they're still Tibet, but they're part of official China, right?
Yeah.
So you can travel to those Tibetan regions using Chinese visa because it's part of China now,
Yeah.
right? And so that's basically what we did. We took a lot of buses and vans and just went to like villages to go and see like what like Tibet was in the Chinese side. And we stayed with like in the monasteries and guest houses, and just trying to like I don't know, we both had this kind of fascination for this kind of type of traveling. That's something that we had in common. So 2 months we spent traveling like this, just taking buses and trekking, and taking buses, and we she got another scholarship to go to Beijing. This was 2014, I think, like April. No, it was already after May, so it was like uh basically May, June until July we were traveling. So for a couple months we were traveling together. She went back to Netherlands to visit her mother, and then she had to go back to Beijing to start school like in September or something like this. And we talked about like potentially staying together, but I didn't really want to like live in Beijing. I didn't know what I would do there. I just wanted to continue traveling, so I went to Tibet. And then from Tibet, because you have to have like a special permit and you have to have a guide with you to go to Tibet. And we had like I had like a 9 day, travel through Tibet. So it's like Lhasa and bus rides and like, Everest and other places. And they spat me out to Nepal. I never actually knew where Nepal was until I got there. I was like, oh, okay, this is where Nepal is.
Yeah. Wow. And so were you going into the temples? Was this where you started doing meditational practices, or had you already been doing meditation prior to this sort of part of your life? Because I know you said when you
I,
were
I
growing up, you well, your parents were agnostic, so you
yeah.
pretty much were left, to your own devices as to find where you wanted to go on a spiritual or religious um, level. So when did your sort of spiritual journey begin?
I would say, I mean, like, you can argue that, we are all on a spiritual journey,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
from the birth,
yeah,
from
yeah,
birth. But like,
exactly. But I
I
mean
don't really,
consciously. Yeah. What I mean is, yeah,
yeah,
your
yeah.
conscious decision to go, okay, I'm going to really look within now and ask the big questions and things.
I didn't know what meditation. I thought I knew what meditation was. Like, so I had like little bit of a practice, and when I was in Korea, like when I was in university, I was already interested in like spirituality, and the form of spirituality that I was like going into at the time when I was at university was like, talking with God. There's like a series of books called like Talking with God or something like this.
Oh,
It's like
yeah,
there's 3-part series.
yeah, conversations with God.
Conversations with God,
Yeah,
yeah. So
Neil
I was
Donald
like really into
Walsh.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, I was really into that at that time. And then I got I used to go to like, used bookstores a lot. So I found Bhagwan Shri Rajneesh, whom we know as Osho. So I read like I was constantly reading Bhagwan Shri Rajneesh when I was in university. Just like I would go to used bookstores, just look for his books and just buy them for a couple bucks, and then I'll be like reading. So I was very familiar with this stuff, and I was really intrigued by his material at that time.
Yep.
And I got involved with like a little bit of meditation here and there because like I was part of, I mean I played chess. I was playing sports when I was in university, but I like my philosophy professor. She was running like once a week meditation rooms, and so we would like like a couple other professors and myself and a few other people who were interested in Buddhism would get together and do meditation for an hour. But in actuality, I feel that I really didn't know meditation until I started doing Vipassana, which is
Yes.
when I got to Nepal. And then after I got to Nepal, I met some kind of yogi type people,
Yep.
and like it was really a bittersweet journey of meeting phony people, what it came down to, because you're a Westerner and you're respectful of everybody's culture, and they dressed the part. But they were like, scammers a little bit, like
Yep.
really what it came down to, and they were like extracting money from you, and I
Yep.
was giving them, because I wanted to know, and I got to know like, there are these Hindu must go places, and one of them is called Pashupatinath in Nepal. There's two places in Nepal, three places between India and Nepal for like Hindu like pilgrimages they must go. And like one is Pashupatinath. I met the president Pashupatinath, and he's a complete scoundrel. I will say that openly,
Yep.
like and his past is like really not to be like talked about too much because it's like really not that good, you
Yep.
know. But it's the kind of people who are involved in this kind of, they wear all everything, and they speak very nicely and stuff like this, but their practice is their behavior is not matching the philosophy, okay,
Yep.
what it
Yep.
comes out to. And then, you meet a lot of people like this, and then you see the pattern of people like that who just they play the part, but they don't actually live it. That's what
Yep.
it comes down to.
Yep. So they don't walk
And
their talk.
yeah, yeah, in
Yep.
my opinion. That's my opinion.
Yep.
Okay. And so I became very frustrated with all that kind of experience. And then somebody suggested like there's Osho Center there in Nepal and India. I went to and hung out in the Osho Center, and it's a cult. Like later on, I kind of started to realize that it's like they wanted me to like become initiate, And I was like, I'm not ready to become an initiate, you know? And they're like, okay, you know, like you can wear this mala with like Osho's, picture on it, and then you know you can do chantings and stuff like that. And I just want to, I have to have my own experience. It's important.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
go, I have my experience. Some of the meditation stuff is good. They have, you know, what's called like dynamic meditation where you go crazy, you know, you jump around and you move around and you scream, you know, you can get all that frustration out and stuff like this.
Yep.
But it wasn't really meditation in my opinion, you know.
Yep.
Only when I went to Vipassana did I realize that this was like, you know, and it's hard. That's the
Yes.
thing, you know, because meditation is not meant to be easy, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I heard of Vipassana 25 or so years ago. I think a friend of mine went to a retreat, a Vipassana retreat up Sunshine Coast, and I remember her telling me how hard it was. I think it's 9 days or 12 days or something, and it's silent.
10
It's
days
10
is
days. Yeah,
10 days.
that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, and it's complete silence. And she said, you just have to focus it. Like the first section she learnt was just focusing on the breath and just the
Yeah.
sensation of the breath coming out of the nose in this area, and you just really get into feeling the body. It's not about trying to switch off the mind, or well, I guess to a point you're trying to clear the mind, but it's really being present and really feeling into the body, and the sensations of the body was the best way she described it to me. But she managed to do it. I think it took her a couple of goes to actually do the full course, but she ended up doing it. But she wanted to know if I wanted to, and at the time I was like, I really don't. I was totally honest. I said, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could shut my mouth for 10 days. I'd have to
Yeah.
speak, like that would have been real at that time. I think I'd be a little, it'll be a bit easier now, I think, for me. But yeah, so do you want to speak a little bit about the Vipassana practice and
Yeah.
what you got out of it?
Yeah, I mean it's not meant to be easy. So it's not like you go and retreat and like hang out and do whatever you want. It's actually, you know, very strict.
Yeah,
Right? You like I know the schedule like the back of my hand. I've done a lot of courses. I volunteered and became like, you know, assistant teacher for a lot of the courses so too. So I was very much gung ho at that time, you know, because the first time I wanted to go, they rejected me, and they're like, because I was smoking a little bit. And I was honest about it. I was telling them like, yeah, I was smoking till yesterday, and they're like, no, you gotta not do anything for a month. No drinking, no tobacco, no nothing, you know,
yeah,
like you got to keep clean for a month. And so I was like, all right, fine. And so they rejected me. And then during that time, I was actually, okay, you know, I'm going to do the bare minimum, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon or in the evening. And I'm going to be really like, you know, strict with myself. And then when I'm allowed to go, I'm going to go like hardcore, you know, like, so you get up at 4 in the morning. I got up at like 3, like 50 in the morning, and then like washed up, used the bathroom, and then I'm waiting for the guy to hit that bell so I can be the first one, you know, in there, and I can be the last one in there. But like the thing about the breathing is called anapana. It's very different from pranayama. I practiced pranayama before, but that's rhythmic breathing, right?
mhm,
So you can like breathe in, you hold the breath, or you can like do kind of Wim Hof type of thing, you know, that's also a part of like pranayama. But this is just like you just breathe, and then every time you breathe, you just try to concentrate on the sensation here,
yeah,
right? Every time you're breathing in, every time you're breathing out, you're just trying to develop. So 3 days, 3.5 days actually. It's like 30% of it. It's like you just try to focus. You know, I'm trying to look at myself right here. You
yeah,
know, and where so you're just trying to develop concentration at that point. Okay. But
yeah,
during that time, you know, you're doing so the schedule is 4:30 to 6:30 is meditation, right? 6:30 till 8 is breakfast. Okay, so hour and a half, you got breakfast, a little bit of rest. 8 to 11 is meditation, 3 hours. 11 to 1 is lunch and rest. 1 to 5 is meditation, 4 hours, right? And then 5 to 6, there's no dinner. There's just tea, and then like the new students maybe get some crackers or something like this, but there's no food.
yeah.
Okay, so it's just rest
And there's no
usually. And 6,
speaking, no speaking throughout
no,
the
it's called,
meals.
yeah, no talking whatsoever. They
Mm,
suggest you that you don't even make eye contact with anybody. Don't just pretend like nobody's there. They call it Arya Mauna. Mauna means silence. Arya is noble. So it's the noble silence, right? And you're supposed to be strict about your practice. You know, the foundation is called Shila. Shila is morality. So they ask you, no indecent sexual act in whatever form, right? No killing, no stealing, no drinking or doing any drugs. So it's like you're a monk
Yeah.
for that 10 days,
Yeah.
right? No writing, no reading, no computers, no phone, no internet, no talking, nothing. Right.
Yeah.
So 6 to 7:30 is meditation, and then 7:30 to 9 they have what is called satsang. Satsang just means like to sit near, but it's like a kind of a lecture. And then 9 to 9:30 is meditation. So it comes out to like 11 to 11 and a half hours of meditation per day. All right,
Yeah.
every day, and then you go to sleep, and then you do it all over again for 10 days in a row.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, our mind wanders, quite a bit all the time. We're easily distracted. They say the mind is like a monkey that is drunk, that is stung by a scorpion.
Yeah.
That's basically, your mind. And the idea is to purify yourself because the actual Vipassana part, because the Anapana is actually just to cultivate concentration. That's the only thing that it's supposed to do. After you cultivated concentration, you're supposed to move that concentration all throughout your body so that you can pick up on sensation, and you don't make any judgments about it because you're supposed to be equal. You're trying to achieve equanimity, which means that you're not trying to run away from any kind of displeasure, but you're not running towards any pleasure. You're just trying to maintain equanimity. And like this scanning, basically it's kind of scanning that you end up doing, is supposed to purify you, and it does purify you. I don't know how the alchemical process is, but somehow it because like all these memories in your body though
Yeah.
too, and then when you become aware of it, it just kind of evaporates it somehow. I don't know,
Yes. Yeah.
but it works.
Yes. Because I'm currently studying soul-centered healing hypnosis, and
Hmm.
we get our clients to scan the body after we've taken them down into the theta brainwave state. We get them to scan the body, and it's amazing. You know, the stuck emotions literally, cause pains and aches and blockages and blockages in um, the chakras and the meridians and things like that as well. So yeah, it's very palpable, what emotions can do, and thoughts, like negative thought forms, can do to the body, to the physical and the energetic bodies as well. So did you have any uh like sort of supernatural type experiences through the meditation process? Like did you get any insight into, connecting with source, or did you see or visualize anything, or was it more just really just sticking with the body and the sensations of the body? And also,
um
how did you work through letting go of the monkey mind thoughts?
Well, it's a constant battle, of like there's no letting go. Maybe there are moments, at least for me, some stillness here and there, but like every like total amount of Vipassana I probably did is about like 15 or 16. Like it's I was doing like one, twice, thrice, like every year, since 2015.
Yep.
But my first experience was quite intense because I was like really, like adamant about it, and I was just going to do the best that I could. And after like day 5 or 6, because like initially I had so much heat coming out of my body, like I was like burning up, and that was associated with a lot of like negativity that I was holding within myself,
Yeah.
and a lot of these like frustrations that I was like experiencing with people, and failed experiences, whatever, like you get into that victim mentality and you start to put blame on people. But the Vipassana, what they do is that uh initially what people want to do is they'd like to blame the other and put 100% responsibility on the other and
Mm.
say, okay, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. And then over time, the idea of Vipassana is to kind of make it 50-50.
Yep.
Like, okay, let's meet halfway.
Yep.
But then over time, you take 100% of that responsibility on you. You are in control. Okay,
Yep.
you messed up, but you're in control.
Yep.
You're in control. And that way, from that moment on, once you cultivated this like responsibility for yourself, all your experiences become your responsibility,
Yep. It's a bit like
more or less.
Ho'oponopono. Have you heard of Ho'oponopono?
No,
Oh,
I'm not
it's
sure what that is.
I think it's a Japanese, I could be wrong, don't quote me. Um, it's a practice where you take full responsibility. So, whatever the
Mm,
situation is, or whatever you're feeling about a certain situation, whether it's something within yourself or something that has happened between you and another person, there's no blame. But what you do is you just recite the mantra. I think it starts with I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And so, whatever
mm,
the situation is, you just keep saying that I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And even if you don't see that you've done anything wrong in that situation, just the mere fact of you saying that you are sorry means that you're taking responsibility for your part in that interaction. Yeah, so yeah, look it up at some stage. Yeah, it's called Ho'oponopono.
okay.
I'll send you a link to some.
Ho'oponopono.
Yeah, I'll write that down to remind me to send you a link to one of the. Yeah, there's heaps of YouTube
Yeah.
videos on it. Yeah. So sorry I got you off track there a little bit, but
No, that's okay.
yeah,
Like just like my initial experience, because every Vipassana experience is a little bit different.
yeah,
So I'm not going to go through all the different experiences that I've had, but the initial one was quite profound for me though too, because
yeah,
what Vipassana does is that it purifies you and you like achieve a level of sensitivity that you never thought that you could achieve. I could feel electrical impulses like going down my arm and like stomach and like uh like every time you move your muscle, you're like sending signals and stuff. I could feel that,
yeah,
I could feel my stomach like moving and digesting and like I just couldn't believe all these sensations that I never felt before, but I
yeah,
could feel, so I wouldn't consider these to be like supernatural or superpowers or anything like this. It's just that we all have the capability to like get to that level because like it's like watching a black and white TV all your life and never realizing that you can just like flick on a switch and then it turns into like HD.
yeah,
It's kind of like that,
yeah,
where you're hearing and you're seeing like when you're out of Vipassana for like doing 10 days of hardcore like meditation, eating like sattvic food, like no meat and no alcohol, you're like basically cleansing yourself and you walk out. You hear all the birds and all the noises. You hear everything. It's like it becomes like almost too much. And for a couple days for me, that you're still in that mode of vipassana, like of like this hyper awareness
yeah,
and like seeing like colors that like you would normally not see, like in detail. And
yes,
then you start to kind of equalize, after a few days and get back into reality. Otherwise, it's like too much,
yes,
It's
yeah,
very intense.
yeah. So you've raised your vibration obviously to a higher level that you bring in that super or hyper sensitivity to things that
Yeah.
previously are unseen or unfelt because we do tend to numb our senses. Yeah,
Mhm.
like all our senses, not just the physical senses, but yeah. So I guess this is a way of unlocking those latent senses and things that we've all got access to.
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
I I mean, there's a reason why we do that because, like, it's like being callous because, like, being overly sensitive um prevents you from being able to operate in a regular society.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because you become overly sensitive about everything, every
Yeah.
noise, like if you're living in a city I've lived in a city before. There's like car noises at like midnight, like
Yeah.
all the time. Some siren is going off. Somebody's getting chased. Something's happening. All the
Yeah.
time, and you got to drown that out. Otherwise, you can't sleep. You can't function. You
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. Yeah. So moving on from the Vipassana, unless there was anything else you wanted to speak about that, but I'm eager to hear about your motorbike trekking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I like basically my experience in Nepal, I experienced like the earthquake of 2015, which was like a pretty major one. I was trying to, operate like a guest house type of situation. Everything failed. Like I'm just a horrible businessman. I just don't know how to do anything. And I was trying to export coffee out of Nepal for about a year, working with a company there, and that also didn't go so well. I learned a lot about coffee. I learned a lot about the coffee business in Nepal. Got to sit on the board with like other coffee producers there. So it was kind of an interesting experience, but it wasn't really financially, great. And I was just like, okay, like I'm not really cut up for doing business. So again, I got rid of everything because I was spending a lot of time like, making furniture. I made tables and beds and chairs for the guest house, so I was doing a lot of carpentry work that I was, I had the skills from doing, Korean carpentry,
Yep.
right? So I just got rid of everything again and turned it into a backpack, bought a motorcycle in Delhi, and uh, just decided, okay, screw it. Because I bought like an old like Royal Enfield, like
Yep.
that was like from made in like 1984 that you had to like kickstart.
Yep.
And that was like first real motorcycle that I was learning on. But it was
Yep.
like really constant maintenance. Like that bike was like really I was spending more money for it than the bike was worth,
Yep.
what it came down to. So I just like, okay, this is it was fun. It was really fun to ride this like heavy, old, like almost like World War II style
Yep.
motorcycle, around, and it was so
Yeah.
loud too.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine kickstarting. I've got a Ducati, and there's no way I'd be wanting to kickstart.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to your shows on when you were talking about your motorcycle treks, and I think I made a couple of comments actually on it, and yeah, just the terrain and the things that you had to go through, and here I am complaining about a few potholes around here after we've had some rain, and there's no way I'd be taking my bike to places where you went. You were so brave.
Well, it's, in Nepal, I took this old motorcycle with a friend of mine, and we took it into the mountains to like, into one of the mountains there. And it's like a 3 hour drive, like, and then like basically about 80% of the way, my bike just completely broke down.
Yep.
And we
Wow.
spent like almost like half the day just like pushing it like uphill together,
Yep.
and then riding it downhill, pushing it uphill together, riding it downhill for hours,
Oh my God.
and
Yeah.
it was like the biggest workout because like, you're pushing this bike.
Yep.
Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh. And
God.
like the bike is like 180 kgs,
Yeah.
and stuff like this. It was
Yep.
just a nightmare. And
Yep.
so that was a good experience at that time. So I had like two experiences kind of like that. The first one was definitely like really, crazy, and then second one was like maybe half that, but there's still like many hours of pushing and like riding from a place where you're not going to get a truck or anything. And anyway,
Yep.
so when I decided to do the motorcycle, I bought like a brand new Himalayan with boxes and stuff like that. I spent a little bit of money, and I just like, okay, like I want to make sure everything's work. It's not kickstarting. It's more like, a little bit more modern, up to date. So I drove it from Delhi to like Kathmandu, which is like, 8 hours, 9 hours per day drive. Like, and then, sleeping wherever you can, and then riding again for 8, 9 hours, and then sleeping wherever you can, and you cross the border. And then from Nepal, I went to Sikkim, which is like you have to drive all the way across Nepal to the eastern border. And then I went up to Sikkim, and I spent like 2 months in Sikkim, where I was doing Vipassana for about a month. So like the first Vipassana, I was actually they needed somebody to serve, so I volunteered to serve. So I served for 12 days, 10 days. It's like, and then 3 days rest. And then I went into another Vipassana like right away. So it was like, 24 days straight of Vipassana. And then I was
Wow.
driving around to different places. And then I went to like this place called Yoksam, which is like a small little village. And then you can go to this mountain called Mount Kanchenjunga, which is actually the third largest mountain in the world. But it's a holy mountain. It borders right between Nepal and India, but nobody can climb it. Nobody can go and go to the top because nobody's allowed to. And I went to a monastery before I went to this mountain, and I met a monk. I met the head monk there. So this is another little crazy side story. I got like a ton of
Oh,
stories. I like
you should
I
write a
can
book. You should write a book.
maybe someday I will.
Yeah.
I think I'm still on my journey though. I
Yeah.
feel maybe it could be multiple perks. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
maybe you could write a trilogy or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
But
sorry, I got you. Yep.
this monk guy, they're calling him the captain of this Hamiancheng is the name of the monastery, and again, I was like doing like I love going to monasteries. I have a strong connection to like Tibetan, I don't know, like a culture. I just feel like it's part of my past life. And
Yep.
actually, I have a story that actually confirms this. But so what I would do, I like to go there in the morning. So like during the morning time, the monks they all gather and they do chanting. Like between breakfast and lunch, they go in there and they chant for a couple hours. They do rain, like playing music, and they do their chanting. And it's a very good time, just go sit there, listen to their chanting, and sit there and do my meditation. And I like to do meditation for like an hour, hour and a half. It's not a problem for me. And after they were done, one of the monks noticed that I was sitting there just meditating, and I wanted to just sit there in the silence in the hall in the monastery. And he asked me, like, "Hey, excuse me," and he spoke like very clear English. And he asked me like if I wanted to have lunch with him, and I was like, "Sure, why not?" He's inviting me. I thought he was just one of the monks, but he was the head monk there. This head monk has a very interesting story because he used to be the bodyguard of the last king of Sikkim. Okay, so the Sikkim was a kingdom
Yep.
all the way up to like 1978, 1975, or something like this. And there used to be a king, and this monk used to be like a bodyguard of this king. This monk, his father was like a yogi who was like meditating in the mountains. His grandfather was another yogi who was also meditating in the mountains. And the way he was born, this is a very funny story because like so his father was like a hardcore yogi. He was like going into a cave and he was just spending his time, and and when you are meditating like this, you like gather like attraction, like people like are curious about you, like who is this guy?
Yep.
And so he had to go from one cave to another, like further and further away from people, so he would be like completely isolated, yeah.
Yep.
And eventually people were leaving him alone. Now, his mother was a very young, beautiful lady from one of the most rich families in that area, okay, in Sikkim. And they were practicing this kind of arranged marriages, and she was supposed to wed another rich person, for like, family stuff like this. And she didn't want to. She was not in love. She was not ready. So she ran away. She ran
Yep.
away from her family, and like everybody's like searching for her. So she ran away to like this guy's cave and ended up being with him. And they ended up being together, and he was the result. So
Yep.
like she was like ruined for this marriage, but it saved her from that marriage though too at the same time.
Yep.
So this captain, when he was 5 years old, his father brought him to a monastery and said, "Okay, this is going to be your home from now on." So from five, at the age of 5, he became a monk. He was born to be a monk. He was
Yep.
born to be a monk. Yeah.
Yep.
So he has the record in Sikkim area for being the youngest monk to memorize like 3 volumes of sutras. Like there's like a it doesn't matter about age because as long as you memorize the sutras, you go to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So at the age of 11, he already accomplished like the memorization of the sutras that other monks would normally take, in their teenage years or, even in their 20s. This is like, university level stuff. So he was already able to do that. He went into university and learned about security and stuff like this. So he ended up becoming the right hand man of the last king of Sikkim. So that's kind of his life story. So I got to meet
Wow.
this guy. I got to hang
Yep.
out with him. He was like really wanting me to like hang out with him and live with him. And I told him I got to go and drive more. I got to go to other places. So that's my story with him. But there are other stories like that. you know.
Yep. Wow. Yep. Yeah, you definitely should write a book, I tell you. So what year was that when you were coming to the end of your motorcycle trekking? That was about what, 2016,
It,
was
it,
it?
it was the beginning of 2018,
Or
January of
2018?
2018, I began, and then I
Yep.
went to Sikkim, and then I went to Muktinath from Sikkim, like which is in Nepal, in the
Yep.
Annapurna area where I had my breakthrough DMT experience, right? And Muktinath is the second holy place. That's where they believe that in Hinduism. So Pashupatinath is one of the places, and Muktinath is the other place where Vishnu, the god of sustainer god,
Yep.
right? Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva.
Yep.
Vishnu came down on Garuda, like this bird, and he came down on from the mountain Muktinath. Mukti means to liberate, right? So
Yep.
Muktinath is the village of liberation.
Yep.
It's like 3,700 meters above sea level, but people make pilgrimages from like all over the world there. It's a holy place.
Yeah. And so you just mentioned a couple of seconds ago about your experience like with, was it DMT or ayahuasca?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to talk
No,
a little bit?
ayahuasca is later, but this is
Oh,
crystal DMT.
yep.
This is another really strange part of the story where, like, when I was running a guest house, I ended up working with a girl from Kazakhstan and a guy from Russia. There were a couple, and our relationship didn't really work out very well. She ended up breaking up, and she went to Muktinath, and she ended up being with another guy from Ukraine, and they were working at this guest house. I went to visit her. She was very friendly towards me, and she was inviting me to stay with them and all this kind of stuff. So I got to see her again after like a year or so, like not seeing each other, and after like things didn't go really very well, and she introduced me to a Russian guy who was like kind of like a shaman, and he was carrying around all this like paraphernalia and such, and I've had a lot of mushroom and LSD experiences in the past, starting in like high school, essentially, I was always interested in this kind of like I don't know, psychedelic stuff. But I heard about ayahuasca and I told him like I would love to have an ayahuasca experience. So, he was asking me if I had ever tripped before, and I was like, yeah, like over 100 times. So we set it up like so in the yoga room at midnight in Muktinath. We closed all the like curtains, and everybody was asleep, and I smoked the DMT through a pipe, a crystal DMT, and I had like a breakthrough experience because I've never smoked DMT, and it was like a massive like quantity though too. Because like if I knew what it was, I would not have taken that much. I don't think so
Yeah.
because I would be too scared.
Yep.
Because I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought it was just going to be like whoa, like every other experience. It wasn't like that at
Yep.
all. I saw like a spiral, descending, and I went into a portal. And once I went into a portal, I was like in free fall mode, like I was like twisting and turning and like falling into a kaleidoscope. I mean, I remember the whole experience. Like, if I can just recall every bit of it. And that's the really funny part about it because most people don't remember their breakthrough DMT experiences. But I was meditating every day, like 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, like religiously
Yep.
every day. So like I had a high level of concentration,
Yes.
you know,
Yep.
that actually helped me to remember
Yep.
everything that happened. So, long story short, that I met like a monk entity, and then he was like showing me like some pyramid stuff, and I was just like, I don't know, if I'm ready for this. And they're like, okay, get out of here. And then everything was like flipping in. They were like flickering inside out. Like I was like flickering from this world to the other world, back and forth. Yeah. So it was a pretty deep trip for sure.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Oh, I haven't had any psychedelics. Yeah, I think probably marijuana is the only thing that I've ever really dabbled in, and it didn't really agree with me. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, um, so that brings us up to about 2018. So when
Yeah.
did you, yeah, so when did you first start to realize that the actual world isn't what um, we were brought up thinking it was? Like, when was your actually awakening to, what's sort of going on in the world now and all the deception of, every sector of life? Like, when did you sort of stumble
Yeah, for
across
me,
that?
it was probably like 2004, when I finished university at the end of 2003.
Yep,
But the September event for me was kind of like a big question mark because it didn't really like register, but I accepted, whatever version that they have told me. I was like 21, 22 at the time or whatever, when it
yep,
happened. So I was just like, okay, like, some crazy people, whatever, like, but it doesn't look right. Something was off, but I didn't know how to articulate it. And I
yep,
didn't really give enough care for it, at the time. But once I was done with school, at the end of 2003, and then in 2000 and early 2004, I had came back to Korea, and then I was like doing my own research at the time, like so at that time I was really like looking into the September event as a like psyop. I can't use that word, but it's a kind of like a you know it's like some kind of operation,
yep,
right?
yep,
Not what they have told us. And then I found this documentary called The Money Masters, by Bill Stills. And that also like woke me up to how money system was working, because I thought I had a good idea how politics worked. I thought I had a good idea how economics worked. My dad was an economic professor. I read some of the books that he was teaching at university or at college because I was actually interested in, and he was recommending like, this is how economics works, and these are the people, you know, uh, uh, John Adams and stuff like this. And I was like, oh, okay, this is the history, but in reality, it's not like that at all. And then so I started to go into the rabbit hole.
yep,
I would say like in 2004, and incrementally, it led me to some crazy directions
yep,
where I'm like, okay, I lost a couple years going down that rabbit hole, but
yep.
we have to get lost sometimes to find our way here and there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it also helps us to develop discernment as well, because
Yeah.
it really teaches you to have to sort the wheat from the chaff,
Yeah.
and the fact that there is such a thing as controlled opposition when it comes to,
Hmm.
seeking truth and things like that. So yeah. Um, so the flat Earth and the Mandela effect sort of started hitting the waves, so to speak, in around 2014, 2015, 2016, depending on who you talk to. So did you like, when did you sort of come across that? Was that sort of part of the progression of your going down different rabbit holes, and or did you just stumble across it?
Yeah, like I felt when I left Korea, I was already well versed in quote unquote conspiracies, like a
Yeah,
little bit arrogant. And like when I was like traveling, I carried a big book called Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. And that's what I was reading. That was my Bible when I was like traveling, like a big book. And that like it's like 1,500 pages. And that's what I was. So it's like all about history, all about different stuff in there. And I thought, okay, I know conspiracies pretty well. But then in 2014, I was trying to do the guest house thing, and I was kind of like getting involved, and I saw a YouTube video about like Obama giving a speech about like, oh, we don't have time to, meet with a flat Earth society, like and I really was like, why is he like mentioning the flat Earth at all? Like for what? Like it's so ridiculous, to even talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember because like when I used to have the bar, I had to take over from another business, which was like a board game cafe, and there used to be a game called Illuminati card game, and I kept a couple versions of that, and I, was reading through it, and I remember one card that was, the flat earthers know something like this. So I was like, okay, this is so stupid. I can just like, spend like, maybe 10 minutes going through the internet and start looking for some information to debunk this, and then so I found there's a guy by the name of Matt Powerland or Math Powerland.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Like he used to work for NASA, and then he's telling his testimony about like how everybody's like laughing at the public, and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, maybe this guy is just like, eccentric artist type, he's an artist. And then I found Eric Dubay also, and he was talking about it. And then later on, I found Mark Sargent with his 10 clues, like flat Earth clues.
Yep.
So those were but Eric Dubay initially was my main influencer because he suggested everybody to go and read some books by this guy by the name of Robotham, who lived
Mm.
like 100 years ago, prior to the 1900s, who wrote like Earth Not a Globe, Parallax, stuff like this, right? And then so I actually went and read those books and then became a flat earther after a couple months. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was back in summer, fall of 2014 when I was in Nepal. I can remember it, the
Yeah.
whole process. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, that was well early to the party, I guess, because that's when it first really. I think it was 2014 when it really sort of came to the collective consciousness, I guess, in a big way. I actually stumbled across it. I think it was in early. It was either late 15 or early. I think it's early 16 actually. But how did
Mm.
your peers and people that you were in contact with at that time? How did they react to it? Did they think you were crazy? Did they want to know more about it, or what was the response from people when you were talking about it, or did you not talk about it?
I didn't really talk about it too much because like I was still like I felt 100% like, convinced that the earth was flat and we are in stationary and every evidence was leading me in that direction. But like I had a well, excuse me, like but like so my girlfriend at the time, at the time from Russia, like back we were together in 2016 to 2017. So I used to have a Facebook account and I used to like, write stuff about the flat earth and got a lot of kickback from the public, of course. And then I was just like, okay, this is a waste of time. And then I was trying to convince my girlfriend for a while from Russia that the earth is flat, but she was really not happy with me that I was trying to convince her, so it was a difficult process. I didn't really get involved with the community of like flat earthers, and I didn't really go to like channels and like hang out in the chat. That only really happened like end of 2018 after my motorcycle trek that I started to get involved more with like the truth community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the ME, the Mandela effect, which I'll explain to people that don't know, is a phenomena that we don't actually know when it started, or it could have been going on for eons. But it's like when
Mhm.
things sort of incrementally change or retroactively change from what we
Yeah.
remember. And a lot of people think it's memories that we're misremembering and things like that. But there's so much evidence now and so much proof and so much residual evidence that it's not just a memory thing. It's not just people like businesses and corporations changing logos and things like that. It goes across all different things. It goes across pop culture, the entertainment industry, into the geography. the biology of the body, all sorts of things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we can talk about a few of the Mandela effects for people that don't know about it. But when did you come across that? Was that just around the same time as the flat Earth, or a little bit after?
No, no, it was after my motorcycle trek, and then I settled into this hut that I'm in, which was end of towards the end of 2018. It was like basically end of September, October-ish, and then I was just like, browsing through YouTube, and there was a suggestion on like I don't know, like Mojo some channel, and they talked about like top five Mandela effect. And then I just like looked through it and I was just like, okay, this is kind of weird, and so it was based on a YouTube suggestion. And I was just curious about that. Yeah, I do kind of remember about some of these changes. And then I start to go and find other channels that who were talking about it. And one channel that really brought me over was a channel that is called uh Harbinger of Harvest is the name of the channel. And he had a video called that he believes that 99.9% chance the Mandela effect is real or something like that. And basically he was talking about the lion and the lamb
Yeah.
and the wine skins. And not that I'm a big Bible guy, but I remember about the lion and the lamb.
Mm.
And I remember the wineskins because I really enjoyed the parables by Jesus. I didn't care about like the Old Testament so much, but
Yeah.
all these like Sermon on the Rock and all these other like allegories and parables, I really enjoyed those type of stories. And I remember the wineskins, and it was supposed to be like a like kind of culture and old ways, like new wine and new wineskins and old wine and old wineskins. So there's a difference between old wine
Yeah.
skins and new wine skins, but there's no longer any wine skins. It's just wine bottles. And
Yeah.
then it actually changed because I carry a Geneva Bible with me when I was even motorcycling around, and I looked through those areas, Isaiah 11:6, Mark 2:22, and they've changed.
Yeah.
And then they changed again in Mark 2:22 from wine bottles. I remember wine bottles around that time, and now it's like wine vessels
Yeah.
now. So it has changed again.
Yes. Yeah. It's hard to keep up with them. So what was the first few
Yeah.
big ones that you um sort of thought, oh, yeah, wow, I remember it a certain way. Like what are the first, say two or three that really stuck out to you initially when you first started researching it?
Yeah, it's difficult to like categorize them because there's a lot actually. There's a lot, but
Yeah.
like life is a box of chocolates. Life was a box of chocolates that changed.
Yeah.
Ed McMahon has got to be one of the biggest ones for sure. Like Ed McMahon, like I remember seeing him going door to door with a big check with balloons and stuff like this. Everybody knows you know
Yeah.
uh a publishers clearinghouse and stuff like this, and it's like, okay, that never happened. So that's a
Yeah.
big one. So like, some of the movie line changes, like, like, in Field of Dream, if you build it, right,
Yeah.
they will come. If you build it,
Yes.
they will come. I remember watching that movie, Kevin Costner, when I
Yes.
was a kid, like on VHS with a family. If you build it, they will come. But they never said they,
Yeah.
they said
Now it's
he.
he.
If
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I remember
So
they. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And so and the thing is, like, once you start, I went crazy basically from end of 2018 all the way till like 2021, where I was like spending a lot of time going through like the Mandela effect stuff. I had to get to the bottom of it. I have this like obsessive mind where I need to figure out this puzzle. I
Yeah.
have not figured out the puzzle. I had to take a break, and I still
Yes.
don't know what's going on, but I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
okay with not knowing what the hell is going on with that.
Yeah.
I just know that it
Exactly.
exists
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
it.
Well, that probably would have been your scientific background with, growing up in a scientific sort of, so wanting to get to the bottom of what it is and yeah. But also I think we've been indoctrinated to believe from a very young age that we know everything, like the scientists and the politicians and, the quantum physicians. Um, I can't get my word. You know what I'm talking about anyway. Can't get that word
Yeah.
out. Yeah. They they give this air about we know everything. Like no stone has been
Yeah, yeah.
unturned. All stones have been turned over. There's nothing new under the sun. We know everything there is to know about the earth and the cosmos and where we are and everything. And it's not till I think, and for me, I'm glad I sort of came across the flat earth first because it kind of warmed me into more easily accepting the Mandela effect, not having the answers. It allowed me to get to that point where it was okay to not know. It was okay to say, look, I don't know what this is. I don't know why it's happening. And it's actually created more questions than answers, but I think that's good. I think it's good to say that we don't know. Um, and it's exciting to know that there could be more, as far as like with the flat earth, there could be more lands that we don't know about, more dimensions, things like that. And with the Mandela effect, it's like, yeah, it basically is letting us know that reality is fluid.
Yeah.
It's ever changing. It could be our consciousness because as humankind or mankind's consciousness raises, maybe our manifestation powers are working more um, sort of like more quickly, I guess, and on a more broader level. I mean, this sort of thing, as I say, nobody seems to know how far back it goes. But it seems to be, even in recent times, I've noticed in the last few recent months, it seems to actually be accelerating. And there seems to be more and more. But for me, I think the big one was before I even came across the Mandela effect, I remember Sex in the City, and then it was Sex
Mm,
and the City. And I never watched
yeah.
that show. I've never been really a big TV watcher, but obviously I knew about it, and I'd heard people talking about it, and I knew Sarah Jessica Parker was one of the main characters in the one of the main actresses in the show. And I'd always thought, oh, it was Sex in the City. And then at some point, and I can't remember when it was, but I know it was quite a while before I stumbled across the Mandela effect, which I think was late 2016. And then I
Mm,
heard people refer to it as Sex and the City. And I thought, oh,
mm,
I always thought it was in, or maybe I got it wrong because I didn't watch it. But then
mm,
other things, I think the next big one for me was the Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Because growing up, I
mhm,
was a huge Disney fan. Like our grandparents, would take us to watch Disney when they were still at the movie theaters. And then when we were children and when my children were growing up, my mum, bought all the Disney movies for them. Um, at the time, we didn't know what Disney was involved in and all the subliminal messages that are in the movies for the kids and things, which that's another rabbit hole we could go down, but probably not today. But at the time, just looking at it on face value, it was, as far as we were concerned, it was lighthearted, cartoons and animations and entertainment for the kids. So, and I knew I had Disney books and all sorts, and I knew emphatically it was Mirror, Mirror on the Wall.
yeah.
And I went to books that I had on my bookshelf that my grandparents had given me right back to the like 70s, early 80s. And I looked in and it had changed to Magic Mirror. And that's what really spun me
Mhm,
out. I'm like, this, and then Bible. I've got Bibles that were my great grandmother and my grandmother's and my mum's Bibles. And I've looked up certain passages and they've now changed. And it was just mind blowing. So, yeah.
yeah,
So do you
yeah.
have any like thoughts about what what are some of the ideas that you think it could be? Do you think it is our consciousness that's doing it? Do you think it is possibly creator giving us some signs and symbols and things like that? Could it be the adversary? Could it be a combination of
Yeah, well, I used to, so there were a couple main, like for me anyway, like the main theories were like, collective consciousness type of thing, that was one of them. This place is a simulation, so that's another explanation. Some people believe it's like the demons and the devil, with their black magic. And and then, obviously Brian thinks that it's God that is doing
yeah,
it. Um, Now I used to believe a little bit more towards like the collective consciousness and like, we are all kind of, a part of this reality, and then, we have psychic powers and stuff like this. But actually, I'm starting to lean towards the idea that God is actually doing it, for
Mm.
like now more than before. And like when I look at like, because like to me, all of these concepts, whatever conspiracies that we are talking about, it could be Tartaria, it could be flat Earth, it could be the Mandela effect. I do believe that they're interconnected. Okay,
Yes.
they do have kind of like, a dots that we need to like, they're not isolated. Mandela effect is not isolated from the flat Earth and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And when I think about the big scheme of things, really, um, long story short, like if you believe in God, then He is the ultimate authority, and then everybody else is kind of like, a creation of that God, including the demons and the devil. And there's some kind of a agreement that was made. Do I think there's no evil that exists? No, of course. I have my values and I have my ranges of what I believe to be moral and immoral, right? And what I believe to be right and wrong and all this kind of stuff. But all of that is like polarity. It's like the hermetic principles that we have to deal with
Yes.
existing in this dimension that we find ourselves in. And with that, maybe that gives us the ability to have free will, right? you know
Yep.
and so we can exercise our free will by choosing left or right, good or bad, black and white, whatever it might be. Okay. And we need the devil in a way to be able to provide us with that choice. you know so he's
Yep.
playing a role, the way I see
Yes.
it. But the
Yep.
changes themselves, yes, they are supernatural. I mean, how else to explain it? Are we jumping from one dimension to another, as some people believe? Okay, but like, who's jumping? To
Mm.
what? Like, like I remember my kidneys to be somewhere else. I remember my heart to be somewhere else.
Yes.
So did I jump into somebody else's body? Or
Mm.
what? What is going on? Because what's with all this like memory stuff? You
Yep.
know? What's like, and then how do we know it's not a mismemory? That's another big question. How do we know that we're not going senile? We're not going crazy? Maybe we're becoming schizophrenic. I don't know,
Yeah.
right? But the
I
thing to know is that we're, yeah. Go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead.
No, just by finish saying, like, we all are having the same mismemories,
Mm.
right? We're all having the same mismemories. Like if we were off about some memory, we should be remembering black cards or red cards, or like it could be a magic mirror or some other type of mirror. So we should be all over the board. But 90% of the time, when there is a Mandela effect and people agree they all agree to the same
Yep.
memory. That's the
Yes.
thing.
And that's why I like what Brian does, because when he's introducing people to the Mandela effect, he doesn't lead them. He
Hmm.
asks them the question to,
Hmm.
oh, do you remember, you know, I can't even think off the top of my head now. There's thousands of them, and I've just gone blank. But
Yeah.
yeah, his thing is about if I locked 100 people in a grocery store and asked them,
Hmm.
what sort of avocados, do you know?
Yes.
90% of the people would say, or 99% would say Haas avocados, and it's never been
Yes.
Haas. It's
Yeah.
now Haas, as we know. Yeah.
Mm,
So,
mm,
but yeah, you're right, because if it was individual memories failing, we would have so many thousands of different answers, whereas everyone seems to, most people, not in all cases, but most people, the majority of them have what we used to remember it as. And also, there's so much residual evidence, and there's, when there's parodies done or people have had artwork done, like the Thinker statue is one for me,
mhm.
that I definitely remember the Thinker statue with his, hand, obviously, his fist up to his forehead.
Yeah.
And that makes sense too, because it's touching the mind, the third eye. You're
Yeah.
thinking of, the head, the mind, the thinker, thinking. And it's changed a couple of times now. And
Mhm.
Brian has showed on his show where people have gone, and like tourist buses, or busloads of tourists have rocked up, and they're all doing the pose the old way, and behind them
Yeah.
the statue's doing it the new way. So there's so much residual. So I don't know how people can not see it or say that it's just people's memories, So that's another part of the puzzle is why can some people see it and other people can't? Um, yeah, that's what are your thoughts on
I
that?
think it's well, I think it's because that, if you don't think it's a possibility, in the first place, then you're not going to look for the reasons as you're going to look for all the reasons why it's not that. I mean, it's like, and in terms of like Occam's razor is concerned, like logically speaking, they are more in the right because actually 99% of the Mandela effect is with your memory. And then we have the 1%, maybe more, I don't know, like, but like I would say it's like you have the residue, yes, and then but people can always explain that away. Well, that's artistic rendition. Somebody made a mistake and said that Statue of Liberty is on Ellis Island. Okay, they made a coin with it, and maybe they received the wrong information because we have Liberty Island now and Ellis Island now, which for me I never remembered Liberty Island whatsoever. But like they can explain it away and they can be satisfied with that explanation. You know,
Yeah,
it's not proof per se for them.
yes,
So really, the proof is we are like it's like my mother's name is this, as an example. Like, and it's like, well, like how can you? Well, it's my mother's name. Like I've spent like many years with her, all my life with her.
yeah,
Like it's my mother's name. How would I not remember my mother's name as an example? It's like some
yeah,
of these memories we have like anchor memory. We know why exactly because we're telling that's how we remember things. There's a
yeah,
story that goes along
yeah.
with that memory, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, with the heart, like my grandfather taught me about which side the heart was on because, no, sorry, he taught me which side to wear my watch. Back when I was a kid, I
Mm,
used to wear wristwatches. I
hmm.
can't wear them. I haven't for years because they always seem to speed up, slow down, or stop. So I've got a thing with, timepieces. But as a kid, when I was learning to tell the time, I think my grandparents bought me a wristwatch. And I was always confused as to which wrist to wear it on. And I don't know whether it's the same with people these days that wear wristwatches, but back in the 60s and early 70s, wristwatches were predominantly worn, or pretty much all the time worn, on the left hand. But being such a little kid, I think I might have only been about, I don't know, maybe 6 when I got my first wristwatch. And I remember my grandfather said, "You always know which wrist to put the watch on because it's the same side of the body that your heart is on, and that's on the left." So, and that stuck with me. And so when I found out a few years ago that the heart's never been on the left in this reality now that we're currently living in, it's in the center. There is a slight bit, but it's definitely more centralized now, whereas before it
Yeah,
was pretty much all on the left. Um,
yeah,
yeah, that was a big shock to me, and the kidneys too, because I used to ride
yeah.
bike. I've ridden bikes, most of my life, and a lot of my friends used to ride dirt bikes, and the guys always used to wear the kidney belts, so that
Mm,
they wouldn't damage their kidneys. And also in boxing, you couldn't
yeah,
do a kidney punch and things like that. And yeah, so things like
yeah.
that would just, yeah. Um, but
I,
yeah,
I mean, I remember the like the Pledge of Allegiance when I was in school, and we have to pledge, to the flag, and then they would always tell us, put your hand over your heart
yes,
on the left hand side, hand over
yep,
the heart, left hand side.
yes, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, and the fact that, yeah, like getting back to residual, like
Hmm.
there's so much out there for it,
Yeah.
yeah, how people can still not see it. It really baffles me. But I guess a lot of people just don't. It's an uncomfortable truth, I guess. They're in their little lane, they've got their blinkers on, they don't want to look at really what's going on. So we can call them NPCs, whether they are or not, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that whole line of thinking? Do you
I
think there are a
mean,
certain amount of humanity that are just here as players, to help us on our journey through our soul evolution?
I'm not sure. Like, I mean, we like, it's kind of hard for me to say, like, definitively because, like, sometimes when I hear that, I feel it's a little bit derogatory,
Yep.
and then trying to like put people down because like everybody's on a path, and
Yeah.
we have to try to show some compassion and love as much as we can to our fellow human beings, even if they're fast asleep. And a lot of people say, well, who cares if the earth is flat or if the Mandela effect is real? I still have to go to work and pay, my taxes and go to the grocery store and stuff like this. And they're not wrong
Yeah.
in that in their mentality. I mean, like if you ever, observed anybody who had to work 12, 14 hours for like a couple bucks a day,
Yep.
they're not going to care about anything that we're talking about at all. you
Mm.
know they're just
Yep.
there to survive.
Yep.
you know
And it's not their soul's journey this time around because
Maybe
without
not.
yeah, without sounding like there's a hierarchy of souls, because I think we all end up, we all come from source and we all end up, going back to source, but we're journeying at the moment, I guess, through different dimensions and different realities and things. And so some of us are in kindergarten, some of us are in primary school, and some of us are in, high school or,
Yeah,
college or university. So, but eventually, I guess, we'll all get there. And what you were saying before too about the adversary and having to have the darker side, to sort of balance and have that polarities. I very much am, the same thought as you, especially with the work that I've been doing with the soul-centered healing hypnosis. And I've known for a long time anyway that there's definitely, darker energies and darker forces and demonic type beings that we learn just as much from them as we do the monk. In fact, probably
yeah,
more so, really.
sure.
Yeah,
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 yeah. Like I just think it's just that we are here to learn until our last breath, and then we're probably going to learn more even after. So uh I think like to feel satisfied about like having known everything, there's always going to be some surprise,
yeah,
and like the flat Earth and the Mandela effect for me were those surprises, and it helps me to be more humble and open to other possibilities that could exist in terms of experience, in terms of understanding, in terms of like seeing the truths about this reality, and more as I progress, I would say, is that less I want to talk about like God or less I want to talk about the Mandela effect and stuff like this. Because when people are ready for that information, nobody can stop them.
yeah,
Nobody can stop you from finding out the truth about this world if you are really like going after it and doing putting all your effort in. Nobody can stop you. God will find a way for you. I
yeah,
100% believe that. So, but God also gives you as much as you can handle, at that time. And so, maybe it's, we bite a little bit off and chew on it a little bit and then digest it. And then maybe we'll be ready for more or not,
yeah.
it depends.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think it's here for it's giving us signs and symbols. It's teaching us to be discerning and
Yeah.
also, yeah, um, that yeah, as I said before, to know that the nature of reality is fluid and it's not set. And it also
Yeah.
it's empowering because it gives us the power as well to know that we actually do create our own reality through our thoughts, feelings, and emotions and our intentions. So, yeah, I mean, I pretty much already was on that line of thought before I came across the Mandela effect, but that kind of even concreted it in even more for me. So, you just said before, like, we're still, oh, sorry, did you want to comment on that?
No, I just want to say that, like, yes, I mean, in this realm, there is an appearance of free will. Some people say there is free will. Some people say there is not free will. But like, really, what does it mean? Do you have the ability to choose? I guess that's the. Some people have the ability to choose maybe more than somebody else. It's kind of very relative. But at the end of the day, everything belongs to God, as far as I'm concerned. And so it's just about trying to polish our egos as much as we can. That's a choice. You
Yeah,
can choose to do that or you can choose not to do that. And then maybe you polish it enough where it doesn't exist anymore. if I'm not there yet, like my stone is quite rough still after all this work, but at least I understand that
Yeah.
there is a stone to be polished and to be worked on. That's
Yeah.
all, right? But that's a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because I've heard Crow talk about the different realms above us and like the
Hmm.
angelic realms where they actually don't have free will. And a lot of people
Hmm.
were horrified, when he said that. But I think for me, all that means is they are just so in the presence of the, you know, divine, I guess, for want of a better word. They don't have to make a choice. They don't have to,
Hmm.
because they're already um, in that divinity, if you know what I mean. They're already living,
Yeah,
breathing, or that there
they're
is.
aligned.
Yeah, they're
They're
aligned.
already aligned.
Yeah, so they don't actually have to make a choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on um, near-death experiencing
Hmm.
experiences, or life after death, life before birth? What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I talked about this before, but like I believe I've had a near-death experience when I was in high school. It was a very unique experience. I'd never had another experience like that. Basically, I had a slight out of body where I kind of saw a little version of me, like I was laying on the ground and I kind of slightly like see myself, like just, but not completely like floating above and stuff like this. And then I don't know for how long, but then I can remember being in a state of timelessness, spacelessness, but I still had a sense of individuality. It was a very and but I can remember, like I can recall this very well, like almost like anytime, because it was such a strong impression
Yeah,
that it never went away from me.
yeah,
And so basically what it came down to is like everything was white and I was trying to look for my body, but I couldn't. Everything is white, everything is bright light. So I cannot distinguish my hand from anything else. But I could sense that I had myself that was separate somehow, but I couldn't see myself. But the feeling that this was like, this is like bliss. This is like a being like a baby in the mother's womb or something like this. Maybe these are the best ways for me to, but it just felt right and comfortable and, safe and, like just, it's like, it was timelessness being there, and
yeah,
and I just like you're not like thinking about I don't remember thinking about my parents or friends or my body. I just was like that, like just
yeah,
there. And
yeah,
you don't know how much time passes because there's no distinction between one moment to another. There's no movement
yeah,
whatsoever. You just feel okay and content and good. And there was a little bit of a moment of me trying to like find myself, but then after you fail at doing so, you don't care anymore.
yeah.
It's
It's like
just
you
like
just
you're there.
surrender. Yeah. So did that
Yeah.
happen through an accident, or was it just when you were like was it when
It
you were
was through
asleep?
alcohol.
Oh yeah,
Like I was a little bit of like a straight edge kid, like I was like, and then I went to like a house party at my friend's place out in the farm, and we bought like a lot of alcohol, and I was really overdoing it. And then we were smoking up like in the middle and then drinking some more, and I lost complete control.
hmm,
Like like passed out on the floor. My friends, I could feel that they were like slapping me and they were like shaking me,
yeah,
and I wanted to tell them I'm okay. It was really weird. Like I felt like so clear,
yeah,
at that moment when they were like shaking me and slapping me. And then I lost like my consciousness, and went into the different state. When I woke up in the morning, everybody was gone except for that one kid who was the son of the house where we were doing the party, because I think everybody was afraid that actually they had to deal with a dead body there. The
yeah,
first thing I did is finding a bucket and I like projectile vomited
yeah,
into the bucket, and then my friend drove me home. And I remember the whole day I was thinking about that experience, and I was thinking like, did my brain wire go off? I couldn't speak to anybody about it because not that I was ashamed of it, I just didn't know how to articulate what I had experienced.
Yep.
And only when I went to university and when I was studying psychology, I took a class on parapsychology when I was a freshman, and they were talking about ESP and all that stuff, but they had a section on near-death experiences. And when I was reading that chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so much like the experience that I had, like the
Yep.
tunnel of light, and not quite like that, but like, like this white light and, like floatiness and all this kind of stuff, like disassociation with your body. Uh, it all lined up. So that's why I associate. And I've never had another experience like that. I
Yeah.
wanted to get drunk more and more and more, actually, after that point, to induce myself to get to a point where I could have another experience like that. But I never had another experience like that.
Yep.
Even with my breakthrough DMT experience, that was a very unique, once in a lifetime experience for me, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fascinated with near-death experiences. I haven't had one um, like that. I've had a couple of moments. There was one time when I was a very young child. It was before we left England, so it would have been before I was 7. I've got a feeling I was probably closer to infancy, maybe 2, 3. And I was in my parents' bed. We used to go in and snuggle with my parents on Sunday mornings. We were allowed to jump in the middle of our parents and snuggle in bed while they had a few more minutes sleep in. And this was back in the 60s, and mum had some paisley print curtains in the bedroom. And I remember staring at the curtains, and all of a sudden, it was like I filled the room. It was like my consciousness had come out of my body, and I filled the room, and I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but I didn't feel that I had a body. It was more that I was just an energy or something. And I kind of projected myself into the pattern in the curtains and became the colors and the pattern of that paisley print in the curtains. It was just so bizarre. I still can't really explain fully how it felt, and I don't even remember how I sort of got back into my body. But that's all I really remember about that. And the only other experience I had was I was nearly drowned when I was about, I think I was about 8 or 9, and I was held under in a swimming pool um, by a girl I didn't even know. We're at a public pool, and I'm just splashing around, and my parents were further up. And because I was quite a competent swimmer, they knew that I was okay down in the shallow end of the pool. But there was this teenage girl. Unbeknownst to me, I must have been annoying her because I was splashing her, and she came and she just held me under and just put her whole body weight on me. And I can
Oh my
remember
gosh.
just, yeah, and I was fighting, and the more I was fighting, the more she was pushing me. And I remember I got to the point where I thought I was going to die, and I could see just blurrily because I didn't have goggles on. I could see other swimmers around me under the water, legs moving and things like that. And then everything just went black, and I just let go. And as soon as I did that, I must have gone limp, and she's obviously panicked and she's let go of me. And then next minute I just bobbed up to the surface of the water and came to as if like, and coughing and spluttering, and then managed to get my breath and scream out for mum. Yeah, but so I don't know whether I actually left my body, but I got to the point, I think, where I was just about to disconnect and everything in front of me had just gone black. So, but I've always been fascinated in NDEs and OBEs, and I read Robert Monroe's books when I was like in my teens and early 20s and things like that. So, yeah, I loved, and also reincarnation. I've read many books on people that have had reincarnation experiences, and that's why I
Mhm.
love the work I do with the soul center healing hypnosis, because it also involves a little bit of, well, we call it past life regression, but I think that term past life is a little bit redundant now that we know that everything, time isn't linear.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, you mentioned earlier that you had an experience where you tapped into one of your, so-called past lives. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, it's not so vivid of a thing. It's not about the tapping into my past experience. It's more of a like I went to in India they have these rishis. They are like a family lineage who believe that they come from one of the eight great rishis of Indian lore, where they are the ones who brought like knowledge, the Vedic knowledge, into Indian culture. So there's a family in a place in a city called Haridwar, which is near Rishikesh. Rishikesh is where like all these like people go and do yoga stuff. You know, Haridwar is like half an hour away from there. My Russian girlfriend and I were interested in knowing about our charts and how would we actually match astrologically using Vedic astrology or Jyotishya, some people say. So we decided to go to this family, and they have a temple, and they come from a lineage of astrologers, and they're very like you know, they don't accept money. They accept donations, but there's no like cost to do. So they like, gave us a room to stay, and then the gentleman who was so whole family are astrologers. So there was like a husband, a wife, two kids, and a grandfather guy. And the grandfather guy was like 80 years old back then, and that was like 2016. I'm not sure if he's around anymore, to be honest. And he didn't speak a lot of English at all. So my girlfriend, luckily, she spoke Hindi, and she was translating what he was saying. But basically, he was saying, looking at our chart, he was looking at my chart specifically, and then he was looking at our kind of connection, and he was saying that we were both like Tibetan monks in our past lives, and then we both came to Nepal. We met in Nepal. He doesn't know about that information about us,
Yep.
but that's where we met. But we didn't tell him about like our details so much. And he said that we were both monks. And then my girlfriend is like a Buddhist. Like she's also into Vipassana. She like says that she's a Buddhist. I never considered myself a Buddhist myself.
Yep.
So we were both monks, and then we, I guess, fell in love, met in Nepal, and then we decided to have like a regular like lifestyle. And then we actually both of us moved away from Nepal to the area that I am living now. And my girlfriend actually brought me to this area in the Kulu Valley, and that's where we settled, but that's where we split apart in our past life, which actually we're like, doing that again. We are
Yep.
no longer together, and we kind of split apart. I continue to live here. She's still loves this area, and she comes to visit every once in a while. But we're no longer together, and she's doing her thing, and she's going on her path, and I'm going on my path.
Yep.
But we were together for that duration of the time. So yeah, so and like I said before, like I have like a strong connection to the Tibetan. Like I feel like if I go to Tibet, like it's my home.
Yep.
I really feel like I'm okay there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I've never, well, I might have been to Scotland when I was an infant, but I don't have conscious memories. But I feel very connected to Scotland. So I've often wondered whether I've had, lives in Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. But doing this soul-centered healing hypnosis work has just been wonderful to um, you know, help people to tap into things that they may have had in other lives that have affected them in this life, and how they can then heal in this life, which then ultimately heals all lives across, all time, dimension, and
Yeah.
space. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just lovely. Yeah.
Work is now. I mean, it's not about the
Yeah.
future. It's about you have to get out of the generational trauma now,
Yes.
and
Exactly.
not someday. We
Yeah.
got to work on it now. And
Yes.
I'm sure you're familiar with this guy. I think his name is Michael Newton. He talked about like the journey of souls,
Yep.
destiny of souls, stuff like
Yes.
that. So he was also a hypnotist, and he was hypnotizing people, and then found out more about their past life regression and stuff like this. I was really into this material called Seth Speaks, and
Yes. Yeah,
Seth
me
is
too.
talking
Yeah.
about like how like all these dimensions coexist, like at the same time. There's no
Yep.
past life. That's still
Yep.
happening right now. This
Yes.
life is happening right now. Future life is happening right now.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I read the Seth material too. Jane Roberts and her
Yep.
partner, yeah, Robert Butts, I think his name was. But
Yep.
yeah, and I think I don't know whether it was in the Seth material, but I think when I was sort of in my 20s and I was trying to wrap my head around the fact that time's not linear, um, I think the analogy that was drawn was you've got three train stations. You've got train station A, train station B, and train station C. And as the train's going through train station A, it doesn't mean that B and C aren't still existing. It's just you're not there yet. But then when you go through to train station B, A still exists, but your consciousness or the train isn't there. It's moved forward, but doesn't mean that train station A doesn't exist. And train station
Mhm.
C is still existing there, but you're just not there yet. So that was how, but that's a very simplistic, version. Because there's a guy that I've been looking at on YouTube in recent months called Darius J. Wright. He's American born, but he's now living in Australia, and he actually does NDEs at will, and he teaches people how to do it. He's been doing it his whole life. It started involuntary as a child, but he learnt how to sort of harness what was going on and now do it sort of more in a controlled environment, in a controlled way. And he talks about time as being almost like stacked upon, like layers, levels and layers upon, and you can look down at, and it's one thing, but there's also different layers and levels to it. So, yeah, but his work's really interesting, and yeah, just going into the different dimensions, going into the halls of Amente and the Akashic records and things like that. It's just so fascinating to know
Yeah.
that we can all have access to all this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've been on for nearly 2 hours, so I guess it's probably time to wind it down for today. Or I could keep talking for another another hour or two, but I've got things I've got to go and do now, and I
Yeah.
guess I'd better let you get on with the rest of your day. So I'm and so appreciative that you took the time to come on my podcast today. So where can
Yeah.
people find you, Nachiketa? So
Well, they can come to my channel, and check out what I do over there. Basically, everything that we talked about is something that I'm, more or less interested in. Exploring further. I mean, like I've already been a flat earther. Everybody knows I'm a flat earther, but but like, and I talk about the Mandela effect, and so we speculate about, what are some other possibilities or spiritual. And like for me, it's about spirituality and how
yeah,
does Mandela effect and flat Earth and the conspiracies, how do they fit into the spiritual aspect of things, like
yeah,
what are we here to learn, how are we supposed to wise up nowadays. I'm really getting into this kind of alternate history type stuff because actually that's a piece of the puzzle that's been very
yeah,
much needed for me to really understand, like, how we came to be where we are now, in terms of like history is concerned, like actual
yes,
genuine real history. And
yes,
yeah, so like that's been of a big interest to me, and I've been getting into the Quran actually a lot. So I feel like this is a time now for me to get to know a little bit more about what the Quran has to say, because I'm somewhat familiar with Christianity, I'm somewhat familiar with Hinduism, I'm somewhat familiar with Buddhism, but the Quran is something that I didn't really get into. I never really took it very seriously until this year, and now I'm finding it to be very fascinating, actually. There's a lot of stuff in there that I took it for granted, and it's now time for me to learn a little bit more about that. So that's kind of the journey that I'm on right now.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Oh, that's great. Well, I'll leave your link to your YouTube channel in the description below, so people
Yeah.
can go over and subscribe to your channel, and if they're interested, and watch your videos. But yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
been
you.
such a
Yeah.
pleasure.
I
Yes,
appreciate it. Yeah.
yes, no
Thank you very
worries.
much.
Thanks. So just,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I was
I,
just gonna say, like, if people want to email me or something like that, they can send me an email. I'm open I have that one email for the public if they are curious about whatever. I'm usually, responding to every email.
Yeah. Do you want to
I don't
say
get a whole lot anyways.
do you want to say what your
Yeah.
email is on the online now, and then I'll still put the
Yeah.
link below.
It's
But yeah,
Nachiketa. It's Nachiketa 361 at gmail.com.
great, no worries. So yeah, people can get in touch with you. And yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us today on Caravan of Consciousness. I'm not sure when I'll get this up, but like I said, it is I think it was the 23rd of March today, Saturday the 23rd of March, but it'll be up in the next few days. And yeah, just want to wish everyone blessings, a great weekend, and a great week ahead. Okay, thanks everyone.